What's up, guys? Welcome back to Among the Fence. I am your host, Aaron, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel where I do music reviews on albums and EPs and singles. And on today's music review, we're going to be checking out the EP Pop Culture by the band Knocked Loose. Knocked Loose is a heavy hardcore band from Kentucky. They started about 2013. They only have 2 studio albums, and I believe that Pop Culture, which came out in 2014, is the first thing of music that they released. And if you guys have seen, or if you remember my review on A Different Shade of Blue, I wasn't that thrilled about it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. I just wasn't that impressed by the vocal performances. The very high-pitched vocals were not that great to me. The deep growls were pretty good, but even the music was fairly lackluster, and the lyrics, again, to me, just weren't there. And I have heard other things that Knock Loose has done, and I do enjoy their music for the most part, but I gotta admit, I never actually went down the rabbit hole, so I never got around to listen to Pop Culture before. So when I got a request for it to do on Request Wednesday, I was like, hell yeah, I'll listen to Pop Culture. I gotta say that the production isn't all that different, and just the overall style isn't all that different from A Different Shade of Blue. But I will say that Pop Culture, as far as mix, production, and just general feel of the album, is fairly transparent in terms of it's just a group of guys who have a purpose in making music, and they have a focus point, and they're just going for it. A lot of times when new bands come around, especially in like 2013, like all the way up until now, probably about 2010 all the way up until now, they try to have some kind of pizzazz where they have something super technical, or they have like the deepest growling voice, or they have like the most offensive lyrics, or just something. But Knocked Loose just goes in it, and they've been sticking to this style ever since. And I gotta say that they perform it fairly well, especially for doing it as like their very first EP release. The EP opens with the song The Gospel, which is basically about people who use the religion to hate other people, or using it as a way to judge other people. And I'm not really that big of a fan of the vocals on this track, but I gotta admit that the vocal cadence with the rhythm is absolutely amazing. It's a lot of fun. It grooves really well. And I think that the riffs help a lot too. They're not overly flashy, super technical, but they have an amazing groove to them. And sometimes simplicity is the best route when writing music, and the gospel proves that. And I listened to it so many times, and every single time the riff just caught my ear, and I loved it. And the song Separate, which is again super groovy, and I really like how the vocals again go really well with the rhythm in the chorus. It just has such a good flow to it. And there's a lot of different vocal styles in Separate as well. And you got deep growls, and then in the bridge, he gets almost in like a talking voice. And one thing I started to notice is that the lyrics in this EP, they're a lot more genuine, it seems like, than some of the other stuff they produced later on. And I enjoyed that a lot too, especially like reading it. You could tell a lot of it, even if I don't personally agree with it, you could tell a lot of it's coming from a place in his heart. And Separate has a super smooth bassy transition into Manipulator 2, which is about, I believe it's either Brian or his friend who overdosed, or he knew someone who had an overdose, and it's just making him realize that he doesn't want to live his life like that. He doesn't want to keep getting high, and it's kind of like a back and forth thing where he mentions how he doesn't want to live straight edge, so he doesn't want to cut out drugs and alcohol completely, but he doesn't want to experience it all the time. I didn't really dislike Manipulator 2, but even just musically, it wasn't really there. It was just very chuggy. There wasn't a whole lot of hooks or any catchiness to it that you could really hold on to. It just didn't really have a whole lot of substance to it as far as listening, but it does tell an interesting story, and it is pretty open. In the song Small Victories, which is about his just disappointments and how he can't focus on small victories because he has so many just big failures and a lot of mistakes, and he's always going to let people down, and he can't find love because he's just going to disappoint his girlfriend. He's going to let her down all the time. And it's just really interesting to see how this subject has carried on throughout almost every one of their albums and EPs, and it's throughout like all their music. And it's interesting to see where it started and how it's still there, and it's still very much the same thing. And again, the rhythm in the song freaking kills it, and the outro drops hard. And the last song on the EP, and probably my favorite song on it, is All My Friends. And musically, it's okay. It has a good drum build up, and it goes in the same kind of riff we've heard from the other songs before it. It's got a good rhythm, and it is inspiring, but it isn't really all that different. But where it really shines is vocally and lyrically. The vocals in it are tremendous. There's good ups and downs, hills and valleys all throughout. And the lyrics in this song are very personal and sincere. And it's about when your friends aren't really there, and sometimes your friends suck and they don't help you. And when you need someone there, you don't have anybody, so you're all alone. And where it gets really touching and just real, just very real and raw, is when he's talking about his kids. For instance, he says, "How do I tell my kids that growing up doesn't suck? How do I tell them that friends are always there when no one gives a F? And do I tell them that I spent most of my time this sad? Do I tell them that I let the world stress me out this bad?" And when I read that the first time, because I read the lyrics before I actually listened to the song on this one, I was like, wow, this is pretty like heavy stuff. And then when I was listening to it, just the vocal performance in it, it was just so raw and very real. And I listened to it a couple times even afterwards because I enjoyed it so much. This song is freaking dope. And if I'm going to be completely honest, that's my main issue I had with A Different Shade of Blue. It just came in with its fists up, and it's like, I'm going to talk all kinds of shit, and I'm going to just be really angry and mad and heavy, and I'm just going to say random things and yell and scream, and my voice is going to fry out and get all super high. And it just didn't have a focus. It didn't have a purpose to it. And pop culture to me has so much substance. It's real. It has something to say. In A Different Shade of Blue, I mean, it might have had something to say, but it wasn't nearly as interesting. And I think I'm going to give pop culture the same exact rating that I gave A Different Shade of Blue. But this time, I'm going to give Pop Culture by Knocked Loose a 3.5 out of 5. Sure, this EP isn't perfect. A lot of people might think it's just kind of whatever, and all their later stuff, especially Pop Culture, is actually like the best thing they've ever heard. But as far as all the music I've heard from Knocked Loose, this is some of their best work. And one issue that I think they might have, especially after listening to this, I tried to listen to it as, this is the first piece of music that they came out with. They came out 1 year after they became an official band. So for them to release something like this as their debut music, this is some freaking solid stuff. But I think they're still trying to ride the coattails of it, subject matter wise, and just the overall sound and aggression. And I don't think they've evolved all that much. And I think they've kind of exhausted the idea of it. I think that's another issue I had with A Different Shade of Blue. But I want to know what you guys think. If you've heard Pop Culture before, leave a comment below letting me know what you thought. If you haven't yet, go ahead and give it a listen. It's only like 5 songs. It's barely like 12 minutes long. And let me know what you would rate it. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like. And if you want to see more like it, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell icon. It helps me out tremendously, especially my self-esteem and my ego. And if you would like to submit something for Request Wednesday, leave a comment below letting me know what it is, and we'll throw it up on the whiteboard and we'll get you squared away. But I do have sort of a long list building up, so if you submit something and you don't see it on there for a little bit, don't worry, I've seen it and I've written it down, and I will get to it eventually. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it more than you could ever imagine, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day or night whenever you happen to be watching this, and I will talk to you guys next time.
I was just an ignorant kid relying on my parents' said to say